Good morning. It's Light Breakfast with Sham sitting in for Bell and JD at the moment. So we're doing a wrap up of the year 2020. And right now with me is Managing Director of Warner Music Malaysia, Darren Choy. How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you very much, Sham. How are
Fantastic.
you?
Yeah, I'm great. I'm great. Despite the fact that it's been a bit boring because the company over here only allows 10% workforce. So there's not many people around and I'm all by myself in the studio. But other than that, I am great. And speaking of the year 2020, the year that we all thought that it will be filled with flying cars, full of colors and vibrant, it has been extremely challenging for everyone, every industry. Everyone's complaining about this, and the music industry as well has been hit, especially hard. Can you take us through some of the biggest challenges musical artists face this year?
Well, I guess for us, the pandemic obviously has disrupted our lives, right? And I think, it has also disrupted the lives of many artists, especially when it comes to, comes to singers. Now, I guess one of those that's actually most impacted were actually a lot of artists who are very much into doing shows, into doing live events and stuff like that. But I guess the great thing about some what has actually happened is that a lot of these artists have actually pivoted. They've actually basically diversified in terms of what they could actually do using their talents. But I guess for us, from the artist standpoint, they are probably the ones on the receiving end. They are the most impacted. But I guess from a record company standpoint, what is actually very interesting is that we could actually see that despite all these challenges of us working from home, us not being able to actually do promotions, physically and stuff like that, what we had actually done was that we were able to actually kind of overcome some of these challenges, by going digital, by in a way, pivoting by doing a lot of live streams and stuff like that. And I guess, from a record company standpoint, what's also very interesting was that, despite the challenges of us not being able to actually get our music out there as much as we should, we were able to also see that stream numbers were starting to increase. Consumption of music has actually gone up. So despite there was these challenges, we also saw, light at the end of the tunnel for us. Yeah.
All right. Well, good for the record company, but also many artists have had to move online. This is something very different as compared to performing concerts, doing it live with a large number of crowds attending. So they're doing concerts at home and live streaming their gigs. How successful has this move been? I mean, we're talking about how much revenue have they been able to bring in from these efforts? Do fans actually take well to online concerts, especially with so many so many of us facing the Zoom fatigue?
Yeah, well, I would say that, when it all started, when the pandemic hit and, there was this lockdown where, there's, MCO, there's all kinds of, stay at home, don't do, go out and sort of situation itself. I would say that people were starting to embrace what live streaming was all about. People were trying to embrace how going online was, and also literally for the artists to be able to be accessible to their fans. So I reckon that at the early stage, a lot of things people were dabbling with it and people were experimenting with it, and then suddenly it's like, I guess, whether it's the west, whether it's the east, whether it's the north or the south, of every corner of the world, everyone experimenting stuff. And I think the great thing about this was that, there were some things that were successful in the sense that people were starting to say, well, you know what, live streaming is here to stay. And that's when, I would say that at the very beginning stage, a lot of live streaming happened at home because, everyone was locked down, everyone was, no one was actually out to, was able to actually go out. So what had happened was that live streaming from home was the in thing. Then at the later stage of the pandemic, maybe middle of the year or towards the third quarter of the year, then you could see there were productions being done, and then you could see that the quality of some of the productions were quite big. It was literally as big as a proper concert. Just that there were limited number of people, there were no spectators and stuff like that. Now, going back to your question about have people actually, or lesser consumers, embraced live streaming?
Right.
Answer: yes, but they have not really gotten out and say, let me just pay for it. Simply because I guess we were also at this very initial stage of people getting used to, oh, will I actually have the right experience of enjoying a live stream? Now, for them, it's like if I were to pay $10 US or 15 US dollars, what sort of experience do I get compared to going to a concert? So I guess people are adjusting to the fact that they will eventually at some point, if this thing goes, I mean, God forbid, we don't expect the pandemic to go on forever, but you will see some adjustments. People will start embracing live streams and also being able to pay for that. So that's basically where we're at. Yeah.
Yeah, I understand about audiences, whether they want to pay or not to get that kind of experience, because they don't pay just to hear them sing, but it's also to experience the whole concert thing. Dude, I miss it, Darren.
I know. I mean, it's like, going into, getting into the crowd, sweating and queuing up,
Yeah,
and then
all
looking at
those.
everything else, people doing the Instagrams and, stuff like that. So it is the whole experience, I would say it's not just music, but, I would say, any live event, any live event out there, it's really about experience,
Yeah,
right? It's
definitely.
not just about paying money and they say, oh, let's just attend it. I could watch TV and watch anything on my phone and things like that. So it's very different. Yeah.
And since we have to get used to online concerts for now, and the way we do things are all basically online for now, can you share some great examples of artists pivoting to come up with innovative ways to stay afloat and promote their music?
Well, I would say that what has also happened is that this year we could also see the impact of TikTok, right?
Yeah.
Short forms and stuff like that. I would say this is also where the whole diversification and them pivoting into doing stuff. So what part of it is actually very much creating short content. And a lot of these artists have started to embrace that. The social media becomes a massive, massive playground for them because they're going to be at home and say, what do I do? I'll make sure I enhance, a lot of my social media platforms. So part of this, what they've actually done is that they're able to actually do that. Then the interesting thing out of this is that there's social commerce. What is social commerce, right? And then social commerce is really about them as an artist making money through their social media postings. It could be an Instagram story, it could be an Instagram video, it could be a picture on Instagram, it could be Facebook, and it could be YouTube, live and stuff like that. So what you've actually seen is that a lot of these artists have started to say, you know what, I can still make some money here and there, pockets of money here and there, even though the money may not be as big as like, oh, I do one massive concert. That's it, I'm set for one whole year, right? But, so that's bits and pieces. So there's a lot of hard work that the artists have actually gone through. And they have actually put in a lot of effort to make sure that they have got the TikTok accounts set up. They have the YouTube account set up. They have their Facebook account set up and be able to actually engage with the fans. So
All
that's,
right.
you could see some of the things that's actually happening this year. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great to hear about artists trying to find ways to stay afloat in between all these. And some artists made the most of the pandemic to work on their music. Example, Taylor Swift released 2 albums.
Yeah.
What was some of the best work released during this challenging year?
Well, I would personally, I mean, of course, I'm going to be biased. I think Dua Lipa's album is actually fantastic, right? Future Nostalgia is an incredibly, wonderful album. And, I remember during the early part of the pandemic, it was in March, we were all talking about, oh, you know what, there's a Dua Lipa album coming out.
Right.
And, do we release, do we not release? And Global was also the global teams were all dabbling with like, if we do it, what's going to happen? Potentially, what's going to happen? What's not going to happen? And there were so many different permutations. There's so many uncertainties in terms of what could happen with an album release or not released, right? So eventually, our UK company decided to say, let's just release it. And I think true enough, she's got like 6 nominations for Grammys next year. So
All
that
right.
is actually a testament of how wonderful this album is. And it's a very happy album. It's a very 80s album, and it's got disco vibes and stuff like that. So it's incredible. And as I said, I'm biased, but I've been a big fan of Dua Lipa because we've done very well with her, here. Even thanks to you guys, for even supporting her, even though it's not really the sort of music on your format, but but thanks again to the whole team. Yeah.
No worries. Yeah, well, we don't play her that much. Well, actually, we've never played
I
her
know.
before, but she is quite an icon. I think a lot of us would know by just hearing her name, Dua Lipa. And COVID-19 has also given many of us time to work on ourselves and our passions, right?
Sure.
Have you seen a lot of up and coming musicians making music at home, putting it out on social media and gaining a significant following? Do you see that trend going?
I would say that, yeah, 2020 has also been very interesting, whereby, from a record company standpoint, it's like, what do we do? Do we be conservative and not release stuff but supposedly nobody's going to be, consuming them? Or do we say, let's just go out and start scouring the world of, of music and see whether we can find new talents? And the odd thing about, 2020 is that there's been the emergence of a lot of bedroom singers, bedroom producers,
Yeah.
bedroom musicians, and things like that. And I think that's really great because even for us, from a domestic artist standpoint, we are able to find a lot of these, wonderful talents who could actually do a lot of stuff on their own. Now, you think about it, right? We have a situation where they are just being in their, in their bedrooms creating music. And imagine if we were able to actually go out and collaborate, which obviously is starting to happen. Even without us going out, we are able to actually collaborate, and it can be fantastic. So it is actually a great year where we are able to find a lot more talents and a lot more artists who's actually come out and say, let me just do some stuff, or even I'm not even an artist yet, but I want to create stuff, right? Because it could be TikTok, it could be it could be anything. So yeah.
Definitely. And I think it's easy for you because I don't think you'll ever run out of aspire to be artists, up and coming musicians. But what would your advice be to up and coming musicians to adapt to these challenging conditions?
Well, I would say that continue making music and continue being creative. And the thing is that the great thing also about the music business right now is that we are not confined to just how traditional music should be, as in how conventional music should be. Right now you could do anything really. And things that if it resonates with the fans, resonates with the Gen Zs and the millennials, that's where you're set. Because what we've also realized is that from a record company standpoint is that I would say 80% of our consumers come from the 18 to 24, or maybe 18 to maybe 29, right?
Mhm.
That's bulk of them. And the things are, what are they listening to? What sort of music do they want? It's really about from the creators of the 17, who's actually 17, or a creator who's actually 19, right? And that's where they can actually relate to each other. So I would say that, for, aspiring musicians, don't give up, be creative, cutting edge, and dare to dream, because ultimately we've also seen the emergence of a lot of artists that we've even as Warner we've actually signed up because they came up from the social media world. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would say to them also, look, the opportunity is now there, even more now than before, thanks to the technology that we have these days.
That's
And
right.
yeah, how do you foresee, because we are already embracing the new norm, wearing face mask everywhere we go, keeping
Mhm.
1 meter away from each other, and I'm sure this pandemic is influencing a lot of our livelihoods, a lot of the ways that we do things. How do you foresee the pandemic influencing the next big music trend?
Well, I would say the next big music trend potentially is already here, in the sense that, you will see what obviously is happening is that people are also, I guess, consumers are also getting very impatient, right? Simply because they've been inundated with a lot of information, a lot of content and stuff like that. When you sit at home, when you're in front of your laptop, on your device, what do you do? It's really about content. So what will happen is that, part of what potentially can happen is that, you know, people, the creators of music, will have to actually do music that's potentially shorter or gets to the hook faster, right? Because I've always, I will basically use this analogy. We are now faced with a 1 second generation. Who are these people? Basically, they will swipe, left, right, up or down in 1 second, or probably less than that. And that's where if you don't get attention, then you're gone. You would have actually lost that potential fan. So I would look at it. Part of the influence is really about us creating stuff that has got a hook, has got solid melody, and it's going to be quick, right? And I would think that the other trend is also live streaming. We talk about live streaming. If you look at it, a lot of social media platforms have also gone into that, right? I mean, why was Insta Story created? I mean, it's that YouTube has actually got, of course, YouTube started the video trend of posting stuff,
Right.
posting content. But what is interesting, you will see that people like TikTok has actually revolutionized the world by giving you 15 seconds of fun. And that is something that's going to potentially happen. And I'm sure a lot of other social media platforms have actually done that. If you were to look at what Instagram is trying to do, they are trying to mirror what TikTok has actually done. So you can see that happening. And not only that, I think the other potential thing that can happen is that a lot of people, a lot of consumers are now starting to embrace the consumption of music through streaming rather than having to buy CDs or buy LPs and things like that. And because of that, you will see that streaming becomes, a habitual thing. Streaming becomes part of their life. So they don't go out to, record shops and say, oh no, rather, to a CD shop and say, let me look for the next CD. They will just have to just click search, and that's it. They will consume the music. So that's where I see, a lot of these things that's going to happen for the next, for the future, literally. Yeah,
Right.
it's
It's
huge.
all yeah, it's all looking positive from here on. And I would also think that since there are a lot more opportunities for up and coming artists to rise up, I would also assume that it's easy for you to source out for these new artists. How do you as head of a record company, how have you been seeking out new talent?
Well, I would say, as I said, all I need to do, or my team needs to do is to really sit in front of our laptops, in front of our phones. And that's, social media basically, is open up for us. I mean, like those days, right? I'm sure as a typical A&R person or an, A&R director, what they do is that, okay, how do I actually find a new talent? Okay, you know what? Send me a CD, send me a demo,
Yeah.
and I'll listen to it and say, okay, you know what? Let's just go into studio and just do an audition. That was then, right? And
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
don't need to. All I need to do is to say, okay, you know what? Check this person's Instagram handle. Check this person's YouTube. Check out SoundCloud. And there's all this. They become a conduit to A&R, and that's where you really literally can find. Of course, I guess on the flip side, what will happen is what you see on the social media may not necessarily be what it is, but at some point we will actually find out, right? So that's what social media is all about, and becomes a great platform for us to actually find talents. Yeah.
Well, since it's easier for you, I might even start my own music channel and maybe it comes out on your feed. Let's see. We'll see how that goes.
For sure, for sure. I mean, as I say, I mean, I think the great thing also what we've seen is that there are so many there are so many people out there who basically became insta famous. They became they become popular simply because of what they actually do. Whether you're talking about music, whether you're talking about baking, whether you're talking about drawing, I mean, anybody can be a star right now. Yeah.
All right. Now, we also spoke earlier on saying that it is very different. Online streaming concert compared to live concerts, you don't get the actual feel, the actual experience. But what do you anticipate? Do you anticipate a return to live music as we know it in 2021? And if not, what do you think the live music scene will look like next year?
Well, it's really, I just wish I had a crystal ball, right? I'm
Yeah.
sure every promoter would wish that they have got crystal balls, but, it is going to be still going to be a very challenging year next year. We know we are basically ready for the challenges. Whatever that had happened in 2020 will not necessarily go away. And, for us, I reckon that, in my opinion, the live concert scene will not be what it is until the next 4 or 5 years. There will be a lot of social distancing. There's going to be a lot of SOPs. There's going to restrictions. We may not be able to fill stadiums and stuff like that. But it will go on, and as I guess and live streaming is also here to stay. So what we will see is that you see, let's just say venues hosting a limited number of spectators, but at the end of the day, it gets actually streamed. And hopefully that's basic. Unfortunately, that may be what it is for the next 1 year. But until the vaccine is here and it is proven that it works, then there's a good chance that we will have a bit more normalcy in terms of our lives, right? Where packed stadiums and ultimately also in terms of literally packed stadiums for sports, but packed stadiums for any event for that matter, and hopefully music will be one of them. Yeah.
Yeah, we are hoping for the best 2021. You can see a bit of live music with adhering to SOPs. Just don't expect Woodstock.
That's right. Or Glastonbury, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think the festivals are all pretty much gone, right? Simply because you look at the festivals itself, it is actually quite massive. If you look at it, I mean, unfortunately, festivals are just, it's everyone's going to go crazy doing festivals. But festivals will probably be something that is going to be happening probably in 5 years' time. But it could take a very different form altogether. Yeah.
All right. So I got one last question
Sure.
here. Oh, all right. Okay. What are your hopes for the music industry in 2021?
Well, I would say that I guess the challenges of 2020 has actually made us a bit more resilient, and 2021 will be a year where we continue to be very creative and innovative. And I would say it's also about embracing new technology. What we've always seen in the music industry has always been, oh, you know what, there's a new technology, let's resist it because they're competitive. But I would look at it, it is actually a wonderful year for us to continue to actually be able to embrace technology, embrace social media, And not only that, it's also a year where I feel there's going to be a lot of collaborations happening. You will also see that artists are not going at it on their own. They're collaborating with producers. They're collaborating with fellow artists and stuff like that. So you've got one single that's got 5 different artists on it. So you will see that the spirit of camaraderie is actually going to be very strong. And I would say that despite the fact that artists will compete with artists, record companies will work, will compete with record companies, but we will also collaborate at the same time for the betterment of of the industry. And as you can also see, at the very beginning of the pandemic, there were so many live events in aid of the artists, in aid of, let's just say, even concert promoters and their workers. So you will see that all these things are continuing to happen, and the world's going to get more united. And that's what I hope for, where we actually work for the same cause, and we work towards the same cause to give, because we know that a lot of people are actually very much affected by this. So hopefully, 2021 will be a much better year for us. Yeah.
Yeah, which is in line with the spirit that all Malaysians have been embracing, which is hashtag kita jaga kita. I think that's
That's right.
great.